This video takes revolution across the Atlantic. We're looking at a range of revolutions in the Americas, and again, keep an eye on the nomenclature and keep an eye on the paperwork. And here's the plan showing the revolutions we'll cover in this video. We're focusing on the first two, and you can see I'm playing with the words again, focusing on the American War of Independence and the Haitian Revolution. We'll mention all the other revolutions that happened in the Americas as well, but unfortunately we just don't have time to delve into them. And I'm playing with the words to help you focus on what you think constitutes a revolution, what elements are essential, and how much change is necessary for a cluster of events to deserve that title. In this video too, we'll see connections between revolutions, and that becomes very interesting in the case of Haiti. And again, there's further reading if you want to pursue these topics. But let's turn to the American War of Independence. And I'd like to point out that it actually took place slightly before the French Revolution. And it's one of the causes of the French Revolution, and that Louis XVI went to Parliament to get money because he was fighting expensive wars. Wars became very expensive in the early modern period. Kings, princes, they turned to Parliament to fund them, and parliaments tended to be a little unhappy about handing over the money. In any case, the American Revolution occurred before the French one, but drew on much the same ideas. Ideas that had come from the English Revolution, with Locke thinking about the relationship between government and the governed, was significant here. In addition, the ideas swirling around in the Enlightenment in France, and a lot of them were about how societies should be structured. Those ideas also crossed the Atlantic and were picked up in the Americas. In North America too, there were significant theorists. Benjamin Franklin, the drafters of the Declaration of Independence. These are people thinking about the relationship between the state and the people ruled by it. And the American Revolution was a surprise. People in the colonies at this time saw themselves as British. They saw themselves in close alliance. They accepted help from the British, or helped the British, fight those wars with the French, which were costing Louis XVI so much money. And it's worth being aware too, looking at the map, how very limited in extent the colonies were at this time. They're clustered along the eastern seaboard. They're not spreading into the interior of the continent. This is not the United States as we know it in the present. This is a cluster of British colonies on the eastern seaboard, strongly connected back to Britain. And while the documents produced by this revolution, because revolutionaries like to produce paperwork, those documents might pick up big ideas, but at heart it came down to taxation and to what taxation meant in terms of the relationship between the state and the person paying. No taxation without representation. And here's some of the paperwork produced by the revolutionaries. They produced a Declaration of Independence, they produced a Bill of Rights. They liked to put their ideas on paper. But look at the dates. This is not something that happens overnight. The Continental Congress is held in 1774. There are those steps in between. There are outbreaks of conflict. There's involvement of other European states who are enjoying being able to cause trouble for the British. And there's finally surrender in 1781. And that's an important date for Australia in terms of global networks. It takes a little while. Britain surrenders its American colonies in 1781, but by 1788 it's found another dumping ground for its convicts, and it's opening up the colony in New South Wales. The paperwork and the ideals expressed by these revolutionaries resonate with us in the present. But in a moment we'll see how they're limited to certain sections of society. The revolutionaries might say that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, they're not even pretending to include women, and they're politely ignoring the fact that some of the founding fathers are slaveholders. And that becomes quite clear when we look at the events around the Haitian Revolution. 10 years after the surrender of the British in North America, revolution breaks out in Haiti. Haiti is one half of the island of Hispaniola. So it's the island that saw the first Spanish attempts at colonization in the Americas, and it's been converted to plantations. It's also the site of the only successful slave rebellion in the history of the world, and it was not an easy rebellion, or, as I prefer to refer to it, a revolution. Haiti drew ideas from a range of places. The revolution here is connected to the revolution further north. Ideas come from there. They also come directly from France, because Saint-Domingue, as it was then, was a French colony. Those Enlightenment ideas are reaching people in Haiti and being applied by them to their own situation. There's another source of ideas as well, and that is the Congo. The majority of the enslaved people present on Haiti had been captured as a result of civil war in Congo. And that civil war was very much about kingship and how kings should behave and how governors should treat those who they govern. Those ideas are explored in that article in the further reading, I Am the Subject of the King of Congo. It's a very interesting article and well worth looking at because it draws out the thinking that was going on in Congo that was inspiring people there to engage in war, and how they brought those ideas and mixed them together with these other ideas from North America and from France, and considered their situation as enslaved people on this island in the Caribbean. I mentioned with slave labor that these islands were places of white terror because they knew they were outnumbered. As a result, rebellions were suppressed quickly and brutally because white slaveholders knew they couldn't afford to let them get out of hand. At the start of the revolution in Haiti, the numbers are clearly rounded, but there were approximately 40,000 white French people in comparison to 500,000 black enslaved people. There was also a population of people who had managed to become free and who were themselves quite often slaveholders. And they're significant in this process too because they have a little bit more leisure, a little bit more access to those thinkers and to those ideas which are coming in across the Atlantic and down the eastern seaboard. Again, this revolution takes time and it's fiercely contested. It starts in 1891. The revolutionaries don't manage to take over the island until 1801. And the new nation of Haiti is proclaimed in 1804. And that process is slowed because it's not just the people on Haiti who are involved in this revolution. Saint-Domingue was a French colony. It drew ideas from across the Atlantic, from France, and people from Haiti also had representation in the French Parliament. Planters were wealthy white French people who had political connections, but other people also managed to express their views and their concerns within France. In this outline of French involvement in the Haitian Revolution, you can see there's quite a bit of toing and froing in terms of the French Parliament and its view on slavery in the Caribbean. Rights are granted and then rescinded, slavery is abolished and then reinstalled. And this is during the process that France is remaking itself as a revolutionary society. Because of that remaking of France, there is discussion, but ultimately Napoleon invades Haiti and there's an attempt to reassert the plantation economy on that island. Repeatedly during the revolution, enslaved people, revolutionaries on the island, reach out to France and assert their desire to remain within the control of France. But there is that dreadful betrayal by this European revolutionary society of the people on this island in the Caribbean who are seeking to assert themselves as human beings and as having rights. And the same kind of rights that are fundamental to the revolutionary proclamations in France. Part of that French involvement is because of the involvement of its European rivals. Britain and Spain get involved, and again, it's a complicated involvement. At times they support the revolutionaries, at times they seek to re-establish slavery and the status quo, and that's because they are slave-holding societies. Britain has plantation colonies in the Caribbean, and it doesn't want revolution overthrowing slavery to spread to British possessions. Spain supports the revolutionaries for a while because it controls the other half of the island of Hispaniola, and it wouldn't mind controlling Saint-Domingue, but it is also threatened by the revolutionary ideas being put forward about it being wrong to enslave African people. Spain also is off-put by the revolutionaries' desire to remain loyal to France, when the whole point of Spanish involvement is to destabilize French control of that portion of the island. And the United States got involved as well. And here you can see the breakdown of those ideas in the Declaration of Independence about all men being created equal. Slavery remains in some of the states within the Union, and fearful of slave revolt within the United States government supports slaveholders. The complexity of international relations means it's a bit wishy-washy. Sometimes it supports the revolutionaries if it thinks that that's going to help it against its larger European rivals. But that revolutionary society to the north does not support the slaves of Saint-Domingue in their overthrow of slavery on the island. And the United States does not recognize Haiti as an independent nation until 1862. And that's fascinating that these ideas can travel and can be applied in this new circumstance, but that their application can be denied or overlooked by the very societies that created them because it's inconvenient for economic and political reasons. The enslaved people of Haiti did stage a successful rebellion or revolution, although calling it successful threatens to overlook the sheer human misery involved in the process. It was a lengthy process. European troops died. They died in their tens of thousands. But the black enslaved people of Haiti died in their hundreds of thousands. By the end of the revolution, slavery had been abolished. Haiti had declared its independence, but the island's economy, based on plantations and on exporting those crops, had been destroyed. And the surrounding slaveholding societies bore grudges against Haiti and did not help its economic development. And the ideas don't stop there. Although in other parts of Latin America, revolution plays out differently. In Haiti, there are criollos, there are differentiations in the status of people who take part in the revolution, but it marks a fundamental change in that society and an overthrow of the plantation complex. There's significant unrest in other parts of Latin America, but the unrest is not quite the same. Within Spanish and Portuguese possessions, there was a clear distinction made between peninsulares, who were born in Spain or Portugal, and people who had been born in the colonies, people of Spanish descent. But if they were of Spanish descent and born in Latin America, they were judged to be criollos and they were accorded lesser status. By 1800, there were 30,000 peninsulares, so these more prestigious, privileged people operating government, holding key positions, 30,000 of them in Latin America, whereas there were 3.5 million criollos, so people of Spanish descent who had been born in the Americas, and who still held wealth, who were still privileged, but did not have access to the higher positions that were reserved for peninsulares. In addition, there were 10 million others, and those numbers are intriguing as well, because in most of these revolutions throughout Latin America, the arguments are between the peninsulares and the European governments behind them and the criollos, who objected to being held out of prestigious positions in their own societies. The 10 million others got caught up in the revolutions, but the shift in power was between peninsulares and criollos. There are some exceptions to that rule. Haiti is a clear exception, and also Mexico, which experienced much more of a peasant revolt and a genuine uprising of the disenfranchised portions of society. But this shuffling of power between two groups who already had quite a bit, as with the previous revolutions in Europe, there had been shuffling of power between monarch and nobility. Here it's between peninsulares and criollos. That shuffling of power proceeds pretty quickly. As you can see from the map, between 1810 and 1825, independence roared through Latin America. Brazil is a little bit of an exception. Napoleon invaded Portugal. The royal family fled to Brazil. When the Napoleonic threat had subsided, most of the royal family went back, but one member remained and became Emperor of Brazil. So the situation in Brazil is not exactly the rejection of control from the Iberian Peninsula that it was elsewhere. Cuba and Puerto Rico also lagged behind. It's still an amazingly short period, 15 years, for this large geographical area to experience such profound political shift. There are interesting ideas washing around in this as well, and ideas about what Latin America should become. It's worth looking into if you have time and interest, particularly Simon Bolivar, the idea of creating a United States of South America, which would be large and a match to the political entity developing in the north. But that idea did not come to fruition. Instead, these independent republics come into being. But that's a remarkable transfer of ideas across the Atlantic. And it's worth thinking about those two revolutions in the Americas that we've looked at in some detail, that in the region that became the original United States, where the revolution was a surprise to many of its participants because they experienced such strong kinship with Britain, and in many ways they were enacting ideas that came from that earlier period of British history about the relationship between the government and the governed. And looking at Haiti, where we can see the ideas coming in but not being recognized by their authors in the way that they were applied in a slave society. These are remarkable outcomes of the manifestos and the bills and the declarations put forward by those revolutionaries in Europe.